so thank you again. That's a hard act to follow with this previous guest speaker, so I'm going to take a little bit of a right turn because I'm going to give you a little bit of journey on kind of what got me to here today. So anyway, I retired from the Coast Guard after faithfully serving and honorably serving for over 34 years. Thank you. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with the rank structure in the Coast Guard as well as the Navy, because they're the same. But less than 1% ever see the rank of Master Chief, which is E9. I can't tell you what an honor and privilege it was when I became one of that less than 1%. Yes. And if that wasn't enough, I would later be put in a position to be the first African-American Reserve Gold Badge Command Master Chief in the United States Coast Guard.
That's right.
And again, I tell you those things for a reason. For those that saw any of the headings of the topics of those of us that are speaking today, mine is healing from scars and a journey of hope. And I'd love to take you on the journey that brought me here to this point where I was in that position before I retired. Sorry. So, with that being said, my journey begins way back, many decades ago, in Kansas City, Missouri, where I was raised. It was the inner city where I grew up, and it wasn't an easy life. Most of you all have been through some forms of adversity. I certainly have had my share of adversity. And sometimes life can be very difficult, life can be very painful, and sometimes there may seem like there's no way out of the darkness. That pain and that adversity was very familiar to me at the early age of 6, when my mother, her partner, moved in with us. This man was an alcoholic, and he was very angry. So there wasn't a day that went by, a night that went by that my brother and I didn't go to bed in fear, just not knowing what's going to happen when he comes home. My mother, oftentimes, we could hear the screaming of her being beaten almost every night. Can I tell you what that does to a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old? The trauma is real, and I remember it just like it was yesterday. Hearing my mother go through this night after night after night, not knowing if there's ever going to be an escape. This anger and this rage from this man directed towards her all the time. And then I remember the night that it was redirected towards me. I was 10 years old. I was pinned to the floor. And I remember this man constantly pulling me up and slamming me back against the floor over and over and over again. Honestly, I can't even remember the pain. I don't even know how I didn't come out of that with a concussion. At a certain point, he picks me up, and it felt like he shoved me as hard as he could. I remember going flying down the hallway. And as I went flying down the hallway, the only thing that stopped me was when my mouth came in direct contact with the bathtub. At that point, I guess he had enough and he left me alone. I remember waking up the next morning with 3 chipped teeth. I remember my lip was probably the size of almost a golf ball. And again, the horror, the trauma that we dealt with was horrific. Like many domestic violence victims, my mother would leave and then come back, and leave and then come back. And I remember the day 1 year later, when I was 11 years old, when she left for good. My brother and I felt like we were being released from a prison that we never thought we would get out of. And it was the beginning of a new life that I can't even begin to tell you the elation that we felt moving from there to my grandmother's home with my mother. It was at the age of 11 that we had career day at my school. My cousin walks in. I didn't even know she was in the Coast Guard. I didn't even know what the Coast Guard was. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, in the Midwest. We don't see the Coast Guard. You probably see the Coast Guard a lot here. We did not see the Coast Guard, never heard of it. And I didn't know that she had just got out of boot camp, so she knew very little. Come to find out that she knew very little about the Coast Guard, but she knew enough that she had my attention. And she began to share with me all of these amazing stories about the Coast Guard. I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. This is something I think I want to do. Because I remember oftentimes I'd be with my mother and we'd be going out, her, my mother, my brother, and I, and she'd run into some of her friends and, oh, how's it going? How's it going? What are you up to? And I remember hearing the line over and over again, just trying to make it, just trying to make it. And I just remember thinking, wow, is that all that there is? Just trying to make it? I want more than that. So when I heard about the United States Coast Guard, for me, that was my ticket. That was my dream at the age of 11. I had a little ways to wait to go, but once I got old enough, I was getting sworn in, and I was off to boot camp. I don't know how much you all know about the Coast Guard, but the Coast Guard is a sea-going service. I couldn't swim to save anyone's life. We also have a lot of tall ships. And with our tall ships, I was deathly afraid of heights. But no matter how afraid I was of heights, no matter the fact that I couldn't swim a lick going into a military service that was seagoing, that was my dream, and my dream was far greater than any fear that I had. So as I go through boot camp and I'm going through I think my first day I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, did I make a mistake? I had no idea what I was getting into. But at the end of the day, failure was not an option. I was going to finish this no matter what, even if I had to die trying. I remember jumping in the pool for the first time, not even knowing how to swim. But again, failure was not an option because this was my dream. This was my dream. Finally, we're getting close to the end. And I hear about this organization called the Presidential Ceremonial Honor Guard. I'm like, what is that? And these guys come in and they're like, hey, you have to be a certain height to get in. I never liked being tall growing up, but now all of a sudden I'm liking being tall because you have to be a certain height, and I barely fit the minimum height. So as I heard about this organization, I thought, wow, you're gonna be at the White House, you have to have a top secret clearance, you're gonna be at the Pentagon, at the Arlington Cemetery, all these amazing places, all these amazing experiences. I am in, count me in. So here I am at graduation day, and my dream has now become a reality because I'm a member of the United States Coast Guard. And then I'm off to the Honor Guard. Well, I find out when I get there, you're not actually in the Honor Guard, you're a trainee. And once you get that agulette, and once you get that Honor Guard pin, which you will be earning, and it's gonna be a lot more tougher than boot camp was, then you can call yourself a member of the Honor Guard. One of the things that they instilled in us is that being a part of the Presidential Honor Guard was a commitment to excellence as a way of life. Not just while you're here in the Honor Guard, but it's a commitment to excellence as a way of life. That was what was instilled in us, and that ethos basically carried me for pretty much my entire career. Once I put on that agulette, I was just one of the shorter ones there, believe it or not. I was so proud to be a part of this organization. I did it for 2 years, and then it's time for me to get transferred, so I'm gonna be going off to A school is what they called it. I'm gonna be getting into the field of administration and HR, so I'm like, wow, that sounds great. So then, one of the chiefs on the base, he was in E7, I'm in E3 at the time, he says, why doesn't she come over here and learn a lot of things before she goes over to A school, so she's gonna be that much more prepared? I thought, wow, absolutely, yes, count me in. I was so excited when I went over there. My excitement faded very quickly when I saw that this man was using his position of power. He was so respected. He was so well liked. He was so revered. And yet he was sexually harassing the women that were coming into that office. I thought, who's going to listen to me? This man is so respected. I don't have a voice. I can't say say anything. I can't do anything. So it was about survival for that period of time that I was in there. And then someone said, hey, you know you don't have to stay over there. You can come back over to the honor guard. What do you think I did? I'm going back over to the honor guard. Well, needless to say, I was not accessible to his whims any longer. So it wasn't enough that he abused his position of power to touch me inappropriately. But then he went on to tell everyone, she'll never have a postcard. She'll never make it as a young woman. Can I tell you what that did to me? It was crushing. There's a famous quote that someone is known for, and that quote I wasn't familiar with at the time, but it says, when they go low, we go high. And even though I didn't feel like I had a voice, I said, you know what, one of the things that you can do with naysayers is prove them wrong by being successful. Because sometimes your success will speak for itself. So although it would be 30 years before I would ever speak of that story and the horrors that this man put me through for that period of time, I said, you know what? Every time I got promoted, I remembered him. Every single time. Because he said I wouldn't make it. I'm going to prove him wrong. Most of my commands within the Coast Guard were great, with the exception of that brief time with that man, and then my very next command. It was tough, but one of the things that I learned from, even when there's not good leadership, is you can learn from those guys as well. You can absolutely learn from those guys as well. There's a famous quote that is attributed to Abraham Lincoln, and it says, many men, when it comes to character, he talks about, I don't know if you guys have heard it, but he talks about a true test of a man's character is to give him power. Some will do well with the power that they've been given. Some won't do well with the power. And what I would encourage you guys to do, and I think you all have been probably worked with people or for people that have done well with the power that they've been given, and some not so well. Some struggle because they're just not there yet. When you see that, go alongside them and help them out. When you see people that are abusing their power because they're not doing well with it and you see there's no desire to, don't just sit there, do something. I didn't have a voice back then, but I certainly got my voice at a certain point. So I go on throughout the Coast Guard. I make E4, I make E5, I'm promoted to E6, and then I get the biggest promotion ever. I became a mom. I was so excited. I was so excited to become a mom. I was so excited to look into the face of this beautiful baby girl. She didn't look like me, but that's okay, you know? I said I love her nonetheless, and, you know, I'm thinking, wow, I'm somebody's mother? How crazy is this? You know, and I was so excited. Then it was time to go back to work, so I found home child care. Life couldn't have been better until I got that phone call. I got a phone call from the daycare provider, and she says, your daughter is doing really strange things. I'm really nervous. Can you please come and get her? Now, Haley was a little sick earlier in the day, but I didn't think anything of it. I did tell her about it, and I'm like, wow, she's sounding on a way different level right now. So I couldn't get there fast enough. I sped all the way there. This woman's on the 3rd floor. I couldn't get up those steps fast enough. She must have heard me running up the stairs. And so she comes out and she tells me, it's okay, she's okay. I just got nervous because I saw an ambulance out front. So when I walk in, there's paramedics on the inside. I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I take her to her doctor. Her doctor says, oh, she's teething. I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think this is teething, you know? So I ended up taking her over to the hospital. They ended up treating her for dehydration for a couple of days. She spent her first Thanksgiving in the hospital. By Friday, she's home. She's doing a little bit better. Saturday, she's doing a little bit better. By Monday, she's back at daycare. Everything's going well. And then 3 days later, I get another call. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? What is happening? So we go to pick her up, and she is crying all the time. She never cries unless she's hungry. She is crying all the time. Again, the doctor, oh, she's teething. By Friday, she was having seizures. She was rushed to the hospital. We've got doctors running in and out of the room and telling us it doesn't look good. Can I tell you what that does to a parent for the first time? This is your 4.5-month-old baby. You don't even know what's going on. Then the doctor says, it might be bacterial meningitis. Don't know a lot about that, but I know that word is not a good word. We are scared to death. It gets to a point where they say, you know what? We can't do anything for her anymore. We're going to have to transfer her to Children's Hospital. By that night, we're meeting with a social worker. That's when the tsunami hit. The social worker says, your daughter has multiple trauma to her brain. She has bleeding in her retina. And the only thing that can cause that is shaken baby syndrome. I lost it at that point. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, who would do this to a 4.5-month-old beautiful baby girl? I couldn't understand it. To save my life, we're meeting with detectives, and we're just like, oh my gosh. We didn't know whether she was going to live or die. That was the point where I needed support. You need support like Peter needed Jesus when he was walking on the water. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need support. My command that I worked for, I couldn't have asked for a better command. They were phenomenal. I've spoken to many military audiences, and one of the things that I share with them all the time is, when you hear the term, take care of your people, don't let that be a cliche that dances so easily from one ear to the other, because it is not a cliche. Taking care of your people is critical. It is critical because you never know what people are going through. My command knew what I was going through, and they were there. I had support outside of work, but that support in work, I needed that. And they were there. All of a sudden, we get these phenomenal doctors, neurosurgeons coming in, telling us what they can do to help my daughter out. They put a permanent shunt in, and it was as if she started coming back. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. The doctors were coming in, the nurses were coming in daily. We can't believe how well she's recovering. I'm like, oh my gosh. But again, that support that I had, I can't even begin to tell you how much that meant to me. There's a quote that says, and I like quotes, and you're going to hear quite a few from me. There's a quote that says, alone I can go fast, but together we can go far. When you support your people and you take care of your people, it goes a lot farther. It's about making everybody feel like they have a place at the table. We talked about diversity, equity, inclusion. Inclusion is making everyone feel like they have value. Everyone feel like they have importance. Do you know the people that you work with? Do you know their names? Do you know anything about their history? Do you know where they came from? All of those things are important. But again, the command was there for me in such a huge way. Did it make me a bad performer? Absolutely not. It made me better. Because I'm thinking, if these guys will go out of their way, bend over backwards to do all these things to support me, the very least I can do is my very best. My daughter got better. She's no longer 4.5 months old. She's actually 23, and I want to introduce you to her. So we've been through a journey, as you can imagine. After that horrific trauma, adversity, I move forward. I'm finally putting on my anchor, and I'm making E7. And I'm thinking, I never even dreamed I would make E7, and here I am putting on this rank. And one of the requirements that they have for you when you make a Chief Petty Officer is to go to a leadership and development training called the Chiefs Academy. So I go to the Chiefs Academy, and shortly after arriving, they said, we're going to be doing low rope exercises. Well, when we got there and I saw that they were falling out of trees into the arms of people that are sitting around the table with you, like this, I'm thinking, what? I told you I was afraid of heights. That didn't leave me because I got through boot camp. It stayed with me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to climb up a tree, put my hands across my chest, and fall backwards into the arms of other people that are taking this class just like me. These guys aren't professionals. It was scary, but again, The ethos from the honor guard always stayed with me. A commitment to excellence as a way of life. So that's what I did. I was scared to death, but I did it. A couple days later, we're having to do all kinds of things. I'm writing papers, and so, maybe I was trying to get a good grade, I don't know, but I wrote, man, they said, what does the Chiefs Academy mean to you? I said, it's making me face my fears, and this is so awesome. And then a couple of days later, they said, hey, we're gonna be doing high rope exercises. I spoke too soon. I was like, oh my gosh, now we're talking about way up in the tree. Now we're talking about telephone poles and things like that. And again, sheer terror gripped me. One of the things they said from my team, they said, we're gonna have you climb the telephone. We had to do a bunch of different things, but this was one of them. We're gonna have you climb the telephone pole, and once you get up there, you're gonna jump off and catch the trapeze. I'm still stuck on climbing the telephone pole. I'm like, what? How am I gonna do this? I kid you not. I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoons where the characters are shaking like this. That was me. But I said, you know what? I wrote that paper. My words mean something to me, and words should mean something to all of us. If I don't do this, and I just said this Chiefs Academy's helped me to face my fears, I'm gonna be the biggest hypocrite. Again, I did it. They gave us the option to not do it. I said, you know what? That's not an option for me. I'm doing it. So I got up the telephone pole. I can't tell you how I got up there, but I did. I didn't catch the trapeze, but I jumped, and I'm like, okay, I did it. I did it. Some of my teammates didn't do it, but I was so happy. Again, just the thrill of facing your fears and doing something and not allowing those to cripple you was huge for me. So fast forward, we're at graduation morning. And one of the instructors said, I want you to think about those high rope exercises. I envisioned myself standing on that telephone pole. She said, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think about life. And she began to quote a quote to us at that moment. She said, the distance is so frightening from where I am to where I want to be, but because of all that I may become, I will close my eyes and leap. That was powerful to me. I'm like, this is all about stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's all about it. I've been living outside of my comfort zone for the past 10 years. I never liked public speaking, would run from these opportunities, but they kept coming my way, and I'm thinking, how are these people getting my name? They don't even know if I can speak or anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my aunt, I remember her sharing something with me. She said, your gifts will make room for you. I'm thinking, I don't need that as a gift. I don't even know if that's a gift, But here's the thing. In the military, certainly in the Coast Guard, reservists, women of color, people of color, we don't always get a seat at the table. We don't always get invited. So even though I was afraid, I said, you know what, I can't not do it. Anytime I was called to speak, I absolutely have to, because we need that representation there. We need it there. So fast forward, I get to the Chiefs Academy. I'm super excited. Thank you, God, it's over, But again, many leadership things I learned through the experiences, not only at the Chiefs Academy, but beyond that. One of the things that I heard is, no matter how deep the seas, no matter how rough the seas, you don't give up. You keep pushing, you keep fighting. That's one of the things that stayed with me when it comes to adversity. One of the things about leadership is, as a leader, we need to be infinite students of leadership. Don't ever think you've arrived. I thrive on learning more and more and more about what can help me to be a better leader. Even before I was in leadership positions, I was a leader. Just because you're not getting paid to be a leader doesn't mean you're not. Because I guarantee you, whether you look across, you look down, or you look up, you're a leader. So keep those things in mind. Be ever growing as a leader. One of my many favorite leaders was a hero, actually, was Desmond Doss. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. But Desmond Doss, they did a movie about him called Hacksaw Ridge. I never heard of him until I saw that movie. But this man knew about adversity. He did not want to pick up a weapon. He had his reasons for it. He wanted to serve his country, but he did not want to pick up a weapon. He said, I want to be a part of saving lives. He was deemed the biggest coward. And boy, did he feel it with the backlash over and over and over again. You Google his name later if you're not familiar with him. This man was one of the most courageous men that saved so many lives on this battlefield of Hacksaw Ridge. You know, and what I like about him is he was an ordinary guy. And although he was an ordinary guy, he did extraordinary things. Why do I share with you some of my adversities? Why do I share with you about scars and healing and a journey of hope? Because I was that ordinary person, that skinny girl that was, I was skinny back then, that skinny girl that, grew up and went through the abuse that she went through and all of that mess before joining the military, and then later on being named the Reserve Gold Badge Command Master Chief. And I didn't even know at the time that I was the first African American woman to be in that position. Why do I share this with you? Because each and every one of you are amazing. You just gotta know your worth. There's one story that stands out to me. I don't know if anyone's ever seen this independent film, but it's called Facing the Giants. One of the scenes in that film is called the death ball. There's this guy named Brock. He's the quarterback of the team. He's very negative, you know. What the aroma of his attitude is hidden. The coach says, Brock, come on up here. I want you to do the death ball. But what I want to ask you is, can you give me everything you've got? Because he was trying to make an object lesson. He said, sure, I can give you everything I got. What do you want me to go to the 20 line? You want me to go to the 30? He said, I think you can go farther. But here's the thing. I don't want you to quit when you still have more to give. So can you promise me you will give me everything you've got? He said, sure, very casually. He said, no, I'm serious. Everything you've got. Can you do that? He said, yes. He said, okay. He had Jeremy, another team member, come over. He said, get on Brock's back. Brock, I'm going to have you get death crawl like I said, but I'm going to blindfold you. And why am I doing that? Because I want you to give me everything you've got, and I don't want you to quit when you've got more to give. So Jeremy gets on his hands, or Jeremy gets on the other Brock's back. Brock gets on his hands, his feet. He's crawling, he's going well. The coach is right beside him. At a certain point, though, he starts to slow down. Coach says, oh, no. Don't you slow down. You keep going. You keep pushing. You said you're going to give me everything you've got until you've got nothing left. You keep pushing, you keep going. He says, Coach, it hurts. I know it hurts, but it's all heart from here. He said, but Coach, it hurts. It burns. I don't have anything else. Then you negotiate with your body, but you keep going until you've got nothing left. He kept saying it over and over again. You keep pushing, you keep going, you keep going. He's going and going and going. The coach is directing him the whole way. At a certain point, he's like, 20 more steps, 10 more steps, 2 more, 1 more. Brock collapses. He's almost in tears. He said, Brock, pull out your blindfold. He said, you are in the end zone. He said, don't tell me that you can't give me more than what you can give me. This message is for each of you. He said to him, you are one of the most influential players on this team. If you walk around defeated, so will they. So will they. He said, you've been given the gift of leadership. Don't waste it. I think in the same way when it comes to adversity, you've heard this before, it can make you bitter or it can make you better. When adversity comes, and it will, and I think every single person in this room has experienced some kind of adversity. And oftentimes, if not all the time, it doesn't leave you the way it found you. But the way it leaves you depends on you. I could have responded 1,000 different ways with the adversity that I experienced. But I said, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to be better. If I stay in the Coast Guard long enough, I don't ever want to look like these leaders, some of these leaders that I worked with. I want to be better. And the neat thing about it is I had phenomenal leadership. When I got to the position that I got to before I retired, I stood on the shoulders of amazing people that got me to where I was. It didn't take long. It took a village, absolutely, to get me where I was. And here's the thing. Again, I talked about, why do I share all of these things with you? because in each and every one of you are powerful, you are strong, you are capable. Just like ordinary people that we read about in our history books. These ordinary people did extraordinary things and changed the world. And I believe inside of each and every one of you is that same strength, that same power, that same capability. My charge, my challenge to you is to awaken that person in you. And not only awaken it, but unleash it. Unleash it. Because you are difference makers. Use that adversity, use those things that you've gone through to inspire those around you and be the change that you want to see. Again, my name is Rashaun Morris. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to be here.
Woo! Yes, yes. Woo! Woo! Good job.
And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I can say it. It's a one-word question to what you just said. How? How?
How did I do it?
No, how do you do it?
Oh. Believe it or not, again, I stand on the shoulders of amazing people, amazing support. You know, I only shared with you the highlight of some of my adversities. Gone through way more than that, and I've had an amazing group of support. And I just want to give a shout out to my support group over here.
That's right. Woo! You're amazing. We love you.
I couldn't have done it without them. So, by the grace of God, I'm telling you. Thank you.
I just want to say, you know, you pretty much almost said thank you for sharing your story. And to be honest, like, the whole time you were talking, I was like, all right.
Aww.
Because I found myself lately being extremely emotional. So I'm like, don't cry. But, you know, I have experienced, my oldest child is 20. His father got deported to Haiti when he was like 4 months old. And I was a young mother, I was like 19 years old. And I remember there was a time we were on the bed. I was watching something, somehow maybe he could have been 6 or 10 months. He pulled something out of my bag. I didn't even realize, you know, he was in my bag, and he just like throwing up. And I was like, what's wrong with him, you know? So eventually, like, I rushed him to the ER, like, why is he throwing up? And so we went to Brockton Hospital, and they transferred us to Children's Hospital. And so they did an X-ray, so he swallowed a penny. And like, lucky for him, when he swallowed the penny, it went down this way. Still, he had airway, because if he had swallowed the other way, that would have been a whole different story. I was so scared, but the social worker also did not even make it, you know, like a good experience, because instead she threatened me. She was like, what did you do to this baby? Why did he swallow a penny? Why he wasn't watching him? Like, all those, like, negative, especially when I don't wanna say as a young mother, I just think as anybody that you have somebody in your care, something happened, especially you didn't do something wrong, you get accused. That for me always replayed in my head all the time. And then I honestly think that's one reason that I do what I do now. Like, I help caregivers, I help people, you know, like to advocate for themselves. And so I just wanted to tell you that your story was so powerful, it touched me, and I'm just so happy that, you know, I had the chance to attend it so I could listen to you.
Aww.
I'm sorry, but I'm glad you persevered through it.
I just wanted to add something to you really quick. I was an injured female in the military, and I had my own team leader trying to throw me under the bus and force a medical discharge on me. So as far as leadership goes, it doesn't matter what's on paper. You can have the perfect pedigree, and that's not what makes you a leader. So.
That's right.
To thank you. One, for your service. It is wholly appreciated. Every time somebody cuts me off and I, give them the finger, I tell my brother-in-law, who's a Marine, and also was in the Army, but I tell him all the time, like, that's my favorite thing to do, and I thank you for that. So, but your struggle isn't unlike the struggle of so many others. I love that you have allowed yourself grace throughout this entire process. It absolutely shows. Thank you for your story. Thank you again for just being this inspiration to a whole bunch of women, and being the first, right? There's a thing about being the first. That's a hard road to have to pave. So in those aspects, and I'm sure you gave us like these wonderful highlights, and even though some of the things were tragic, it doesn't even compare to the pain and the suffering and the whatever that you went through. So for all of that, and in spite of all of that, I thank you so very much.
Thank you. Many years later, I came in contact with the abusive person that abused my mother, and the best that I could offer him was my forgiveness, not because he deserved it, not because he even asked for it. I didn't do it for him, even though he was set free from it. I did it for me. There's a quote in my last book. It says, forgiveness is setting the prisoner free and finding that the prisoner was you. So,
I have a question for you. I did enjoy the analogy that you did in the movie Facing the Giants. And, I was thinking, if you consider the giant the system, and a lot of people, mostly minority, they tend to blame the system. But in your examples that you did, you work in yourself to find ways to overcome, to give yourself a chance to adapt it over the system. And I believe, and sometimes too, I get singled out when I talk to people that I hear complain, and I said, you need to work on yourself. The only way to be better is to work on yourself, not blaming the system and hope that something's going to be done for you. If the change doesn't happen with you doing the change, then you cannot blame the system for you not going to college or for you not getting a job. You know what I'm saying? So that's, and I speak, on, in certain environments that I kind of correct people, and then the other day, for instance, I'm just going to share this, and my children was like, Dad, don't do that. So I went to the store, and I pick up those things. Sometimes I try to hold myself. So I went to the store, and I'm sorry if I didn't mean to offend anybody if I'm saying this, but I'm looking at this guy, looks like older than me. Okay, his pants was right here. I don't tolerate that. And I have a 17-year-old. He's my children. I told him, don't ever do that again. Don't ever do that. But then I told this guy, is something wrong with your pants? And then my son was like, and then I said, I was so pissed. This is like an African-American guy. I'm looking at him, I was like, you're a grown man. Why do you do that? And then he was ashamed, and again, he could have slapped me. But I cannot stand, I understand, like, teenagers do that, because, okay, it's trend or whatever. But a grown man?
What is he, the clothing police?
I have to correct people and do that. Sometimes it's not taken me well. But my point is, like, people, we as a minority, we need to work on ourselves. And your story says that. You went to places that, you could have, taken a different step, but instead you work on yourself to overcome. Just I wanted to share. And thank you for that. And I hope, like, younger people in the crowd, they can, relate to that. And then if they are in a job or in a situation that, they want to go higher, all you need to do is to work on yourself. It's not going to be easy, but you need to work on yourself in order to get where you're meant to be, where you want to be. Thank you.
That's right. My daughter hears me say this all the time about the famous speaker Les. Les's line is, you gotta be thirsty. Because if you're thirsty, you can do it. You can do it. You gotta be thirsty.
I'm not missing any hands, am I?
Thank you very, very much for your talk. And you've shared with such deep detail the trauma you've had to manage, and I was just wondering, how has that trauma informed and given you maybe a compass to recognize trauma elsewhere and support others, you know? And I think that's one of the things we often miss is, like, how do we get our own compass if we haven't struggled with something? How can we develop a compass to be able to find and support others that are, you know, enduring trauma?
Thank you for that question. That's a fantastic question. Therapy helped me a lot. I finally did seek therapy, and I will say when it came to the sexual harassment that I experienced, again, it was 30 years before I would ever even speak of it. And what got me to that point was I happened to be at a seminar, and the seminar, one of the instructors, this was a military seminar, she was high up on the chain in the military, and she happened to be sitting next to someone on the plane that was a military member that was junior, and his question to her was, so do you get sexually harassed every day? And she said, what? Like, why would you ask that? She said, no, I don't get sexually harassed every day. And he said, oh, well, my shipmate, she gets sexually harassed every day, so I just thought that that was something that women went through in the Coast Guard. And she said she had an epiphany in that moment, because in that moment, she said, oh my gosh, I dealt with sexual harassment when I came into the military. I thought it was getting better. I only promoted out of it. Nobody's doing it in front of me as a commander. This was her talking. And ironically, I had just been at an event probably a few months before where a junior member was saying that she had talked to many women in her unit, and 8 out of 10 of them had experienced some kind of sexual harassment. When I heard her say that, I looked at her in disbelief, and I was humbled listening to this commander, because I said, I dealt with sexual harassment, I too thought it had gotten better. But now as a Master Chief, people aren't doing that stuff in front of me. So as I began to come back and kind of share that experience that I had, that epiphany, people started coming out of the closet. So many women were coming out of the closet, you were seeing the pain. And so one of the responsibilities that I had in my position was, we had a flag conference every year. And at the flag conference, where you've got the Commandant of the Coast Guard, who's the most senior person in the entire Coast Guard, you've got the Vice Commandant, all of the admirals, you've got all of the Gold Badge Command Master Chiefs in the room, along with senior civilians. And they said, okay, we want a few Master Chiefs to be on the panel. Rashaun, you're gonna be one of them. My first thought, I did it last year, what do I have to do this year? However, we have to pick our topics. So when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I know what I've got to talk about. I've got to talk about sexual harassment in the Coast Guard. And I've got to start with my own story. Because I need to make it real. And I remember sharing my story. And because I've got the ear of the Commandant of the Coast Guard and all of the senior leaders of the Coast Guard in one room, I've got their ear. I need to make it real. This isn't a story that they're hearing about somebody else. This is somebody that's standing right in front of them. And right after that, we had a senior civilian stand up in the room. She began to share her story. You could hear her, her voice. She was shaking. She was barely trying to say it without crying herself. And I remember at the end of her statement, she said, Master Chief, what do we do to stop this? And I said, you know what? I don't know, but I do know we have to continue to share our story. So for me, I continue to share my story in hopes that people will come out, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's the challenges of racism, microaggressions, and things like that. I continue to look for opportunities to share my story in hopes of providing that support, you know. So, and as a matter of fact, one way that we do it on a regular is Carrie, that's in the audience here, her and I do, we have a Teen Girls Mentoring group and through that, we have wonderful opportunities, but definitely I look forward to any opportunity I can to share my story in hopes of helping out. Say that again.
That's your gift making room for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I received that. Thank you all so much again.